till shade is gone,
till water is gone,
into the shadow with teeth bared,
screaming defiance with the last breath,
to spit in Sightblinder's eye on the last day.
by my honor and the light.
My life will be a dagger for Sightblinder's heart.
Until the last day. To Shyle Ghul itself.
This is A Dagger for Sightblinder, a podcast focused on all things Wheel of Time, with your hosts,
Sarah Lucas
and Adam Tricola. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Dagger for Sightblinder. May you find shade this day. What's up, OG Shadester? Sarah, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Draw shade?
No,
we don't do that here.
Why not? It seems like the thing that we might be good at. And by we, I mean you.
Rude.
So
yeah.
Good.
I was gonna say we've got to the end of book 3.
It was terrible.
Awful. Worst ending.
Yeah. We haven't talked about it at all.
We haven't.
So maybe you really do think that. I have no idea.
I guess you'll find out. You'll find out what I think later on.
Will I? Will I be
Maybe.
paying attention?
I would hope so.
I would hope so too. Probably I will. We'll see. We'll find out that. We'll find out what you think of the ending, and we'll find out if I'm paying attention.
And I did find like a tiny bit of show news that's not massive. I just thought it was interesting show news, and I wanted to get your opinion on it.
Okay.
If you're good with that.
If I'm still listening, go ahead.
Yeah, if you're paying attention.
What?
Okay, so they allegedly, there was like a cast member leak and whatever. They cast this Spanish actress, Leia Costa, and the article I was reading was saying she was cast to play a character named Magdalena, which according to the article, because obviously I don't know this, but you would know this, there's no character in the book named Magdalena. So it could either be a code name, because sometimes they put a fake character name down, or they're making up a new character.
Yeah, I don't recognize the name at all, but I don't know why they would create a new character that was like a big deal though. They've already talked about how they're like, hey, we faked you out about Loyal's death, but for real, guys, that was just to that was just to get you guys prepped for the inevitable fiery death that's going to occur to a lot of your loved characters, because we have to kill a lot of them off every season. Right.
So, which it seems weird to kill off characters, but then introduce characters that don't exist.
Right. Well, that's exactly it. Like, why would you do that? That will just piss off the fan base. They're like, oh, hey, look at that, another really cool character. Yeah, like I'm sure it's just a code name. Mm-hmm. Let's see what she looks like. Leia Costa. I mean, not that I know I don't know
what they're going for.
I mean, she could be any number of characters from the show.
Right.
She's pretty, but so is every girl in this whole series. So, but like Robert Jordan just describes everyone as. So there is one funny thing about the Robert Jordan like hierarchy of good looks, like because he always describes like she's handsome but not beautiful. Mm-hmm. Or whatever, like you'll especially notice it in later books, but he always ranks every girl on how, on where she is in the beauty spectrum.
Right. Interesting.
Handsome but not beautiful. Like, oh, she looks like a farm wife. Like, oh, so all farm wives look dumpy, I guess. I don't know. It's just a funny thing. Like he clearly put importance on it, significance on it. So. Mm-hmm. But yeah, She could probably be anyone. Who knows?
All right. I was just curious, but
Magdalena. All right.
Yeah, that's what it says.
I think she's going to be a Forsaken. That's what I think.
Really?
I don't know. Sure.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We don't know anything. All right. Do we want to get into the book then? It's the last 7 chapters.
Ooh. So, okay, before we start,
Yes.
Did you think this was going to happen? Like, did you think and I guess we should give our spoiler thing first.
Yeah.
So you're good at that, and I'm not. So,
so we're going to talk about In the Dragon Reborn, chapters 50 to 56. But essentially, we'll just talk about the entire book. So anything before that goes, anything from the first 2 books goes, and anything from the TV show goes. So spoilers everywhere.
Spoilers abound.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so go ahead. What were you going to ask? What did I think?
So did you think that the ending was going to be the same? Like, did you predict the ending? I guess.
No, this was not what I expected.
What did you expect?
I don't know why. I mean, for some reason, I got it in my head that there wasn't going to be a battle at the end.
Oh.
I legitimately thought it was going to end on like some cliffhanger, and
you did message me. You're like, and it's gonna be a cliffhanger. I was like, I didn't engage. I just changed the subject.
But like, I did not, which is so silly of me because obviously the first 2 books ended that way. So why wouldn't the third one end this way as well? Yeah. I don't know why I didn't expect it, but I didn't. So then when it started, I kind of had this like, oh, we're doing this again. We just did this the last 2 times. Not that it was bad. It was just for some reason I had gotten it into my head that wasn't going to be what happened.
So Robert Jordan does a good job, actually. I appreciate this about him a lot. He does a good job of making there are no endings in the Wheel of Time, but this was unending kind of thing. Like there's always like some closure that you get at the end of basically all of them. Like once you get to later books, it can be just like, oh well, okay, I didn't realize that was the end of that character's story arc for this book because he has so many story arcs going on at once. But right now he's he does a good job of if you don't get a beginning, middle, and end of all the stories, at least you get a middle and an end.
Right. Okay.
Instead of it just and really, I can't think of his and I don't think this is spoiler territory, frankly. I can't think of a time that there was really a big cliffhanger at the end of one of these books. Like there's more, you're like, oh, I want to know more of what happens. And I guess some of them you're more interested in what's going to happen. Like you could say that this is a cliffhanger on some levels, the ending, but
like I am intrigued by some things that have happened and some things that were said, but yeah, I don't know why. I really just didn't think there was gonna be another battle.
Yeah, I don't know why either.
All right. So let's talk about it. Let's get into chapter 50, which is the hammer.
Okay.
Which I kind of enjoyed that it was called this. So basically this is all Perrin, Moraine, that crew, Lan, Fael, they arrive in Tyr, and they've been Tyr. Did we decide what are we calling it, Tyr or Tear?
I've been calling it Tear, but you've been all over the place.
I've been all over the story of my life. So they arrive in Tear.
Good to travel.
And they've been obviously like going after Rand. It's been weeks. And they go to this inn that Lance shows. And I found this amusing that like now is the time that Fael finally pieces together, like, oh, they're looking for Rand, and it's because Rand's the Dragon Reborn, and they're going to Tyr because the Stone of Tyr is there, and that's where Kalandor is. So obviously that's where Rand's going, and it's like this whole thing that she finally has learned. I kind of like though that she's, I don't know don't want to say on the outskirts of the group, but she doesn't have all the information, and it's fun as somebody reading it the first time to read about a character that's also learning information at the same time.
Okay.
I find it like an interesting tie-in. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so Perrin ends up going to this blacksmith in town and just wants to like work on a piece of metal, and he does, and blacksmith gives him, he's like, oh, I need this, then I need this done. And Perrin just starts doing all of these things, and this guy's just like, you're like a master at this. You don't need to do an apprenticeship. If you want to come back and work here at all, like I'll have work for you, like this whole thing. And he ends up giving him this hammer that Perrin takes and puts down beside his axe in his room. And
I loved this part. Actually.
I thought this was very meaningful. Like I don't know the whole gravity of it yet, but it obviously is meaningful and carries a lot of weight for Perrin. The fact that he's putting it beside his axe, I think, said a lot.
Yeah, so this is incredibly important for his story arc. Actually, the hammer is, as you'll see in later books, it's the hammer holds extremely extreme importance to him. But I mean, that I really love that he gets this little respite. They're like, it's the calm before the storm. The Moraine and land, and you know that there's dark friends in the city. That there's that there are issues going. Like Rand is going there. There's Calendar. There's Matt is killing people. It's just like this whole thing. Like Moraine even says like the whole city is just bubbling right now, and it's because there's 3 Taviran in there. It's not just because it's only Rand, but and maybe that happened. Now I think that they say that at some point in this chapter, but I love that he's able to revisit the thing that he knows, because that's like the one thing that's how Land defines him. Even like he calls him blacksmith, and he's been out of his depth doing all this other crazy stuff, and he's held his own. He's been fine, but this is the thing that he grew up thinking he was going to do. This is the thing he wanted to do. This is how he pictures himself, and he gets a little bit of time to revisit that and see, have I outgrown this? Is this still something I want to be? And it also shows Fail, right? That she's like, so you are a blacksmith.
Well, and I think it's also a really good thing to highlight, like you were saying, how he, like, this is who he was in the 2 Rivers and what he thought he was going to be. And it carries even more weight to that because he's been pushing, like you keep hearing these moments of where he finds himself trying to connect to the wolves and see if there's wolves nearby. And then he immediately is like, oh no, and tries to shut it down. Like he doesn't want to be doing it. And he's trying to squash that part of who he is. So it's nice to see this where he wants to relate to who he feels he is or who he was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's fun to see him like just kind of rediscover it, and he clearly does feel more at peace doing it. And it's like after all these months of him just like being terrified and scared and like all these and stressed out, and he's saving people and killing people and all these new experiences, and the Dragon Reborn and Aes Sedai and White Cloaks and wolves, he gets to go back and just have a few days where he just does something he really he relates with and does. Like everyone needs that. Everyone needs a little respite.
Yeah. Okay. So also in this chapter though, Moraine ends up telling them, like you said, that there are dark friends in the town. And she says that the High Lord Salmon is actually the Forsaken Bilal. And that there is like a plan for Rand to be lured to the Heart of the Stone so that they can get him to take Calendor, because only the Dragon Reborn can take it. Right. And then they are either going to capture him or kill him, and then these Forsaken will have Calendor. So she's basically decided, but her and Lan are going to go into the stone. They're going to try and overthrow this plan, and everyone else should stay behind and not follow them. So yeah, and she does reveal here that she's learned. I'm curious about this. She says that in the past year that she has taught herself how to weave balefire.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that as an Aes Sedai, she can't like outright lie. But I just got the vibe from her that she has known how to do it for longer than that. I don't know why. Does it really matter?
I don't think it matters. I didn't get that vibe though. I think she was like, you know what? I need to become overpowered. We have to deal with overpowered people. I need my own overpowered ability.
Fair. All right. And then the only other thing I wanted to point out in this chapter is that Lan also points out that there are Aiel. He's seen Aiel around the city and on the rooftops. So
yeah,
I thought that was important to note.
Seems important,
right? I mean, I feel like if Lan's pointing it out, it's probably of decent importance, mild importance, maybe.
Decent to mild importance.
Yeah. Any thoughts? Any decent to mild important thoughts?
No, everything of mine is ultra important, so I'll just pass.
Okay, great.
If we're only just taking mediocrity, I'll just go.
We're scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Goodbye.
All right. So the next chapter is chapter 1, Bait for the Net. And this, now we're back with the girls. So we're back with Nynaeve and Iguain and Elaine. And so Nynaeve is pretty sure that she has seen Rand in town, and then ends up losing sight of him before she can actually confirm this from, I think there's like a cart or something passes between their
Sure.
Doesn't matter. Anyway, so I think it's just important to note that like Rand is there and people are seeing him, but they're not totally sure if they're seeing him.
Okay, so just a real quick interjection though. We don't know if she saw Rand or maybe she saw an Aiel.
Yeah, that's a good point. She saw someone who looked like Rand.
Right. Well, and probably it's Rand. Now that I said that out loud, and I'm like, even the sight of one Aiel dressed the way Aiel dress would start a panic. I think people would. So my guess is that it was actually Rand, because he's going to be dressed in a familiar way that people aren't going to panic and think he's Aiel.
Right. But even so, again, like you were saying with Moraine noting about the people in town and their mood, and Nynaeve notes on it as well. So like everyone is noting that they're just in like a total sulking, sullen mood. And
this is the same thing I talked about last time, I think, when it's like, this doesn't really happen in other books where a Forsaken controls a town and everyone's a grump because of it.
Right.
But in this book, he's trying to portray just how impactful the Forsaken really are. Like, they're so powerful that the whole town, like an entire big city, is like 1/5 of them are just a-holes, or they're just, or some of them are yelling, and some of them are just like sad, or they don't care, they've given up on life or whatever. Like they're emotionally and like they're physically impacted by just the mere presence of a Forsaken. Yeah, exactly. I think that's important to know. Yeah, well, it's amusing to me because it doesn't and maybe we'll pay more attention, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't think this happens in other books. I think that he's just like, you know what, that's kind of an annoying trait, let's just stop it. The only you're gonna kill me, it kind of happens in Harry Potter. Not. It kind of happens in Harry Potter in that, but it's not a people that does it, it's Horcruxes that do it, and they can affect your personality. And you see it happen in particular, like to Ron, you see it happen to Harry. Like if you're surrounded by a Horcrux, they're so evil that they bring out like the worst in you. I always thought that was overpowered for like a sliver of who Voldemort was. Like it can totally corrupt one, like it can affect people to that degree. Like, so just being around the full Voldemort is going to just like be an overwhelmingly corrupting
I don't think
effect.
I don't think it has to do with who the person is. Like, I don't think it has to do with Voldemort. I think it has to do with how you make a Horcrux, and that it is such an evil, vile thing to do, that having that carried with you.
Okay, I'm not as good at the lore in Harry Potter. Maybe we should cover Harry Potter at some point. You can, you know what? That seems like our podcast would be like 3 hours every day.
Probably.
And I would say like 3 words.
but that's immediately what it made me think of is and again, it's not a people, it's just a type of.
Okay, no, I like that though. Like, there's, I guess, just the idea of, I don't know, the agency of people is in a way being impacted. Like, their free will isn't completely being dominated and taken away, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know. So some people can't live in Seattle, for instance. They can't live in Washington because they choose not to be depressed all the time, because they know that the weather there is going to impact them to the extent that they're going to be depressed. They know that they're already like kind of vulnerable to that. And so I think that shows a wisdom to, to stay away. And but in this case, like the depression came to them, like they so like this, we have this Forsaken who comes in and in a way dominates everyone, or at least impacts them all to a certain degree. And I don't know, like, just the idea of like the Horcrux, you have no idea that it's actually corrupting someone,
right?
Or you to bring Star Wars into it, like if you have a holocron, like that. And that's more of like listening to their teaching. But I know that in the past, the old school, like the Legends material now, like there were some artifacts that would corrupt you over time too. So I don't know, that seems like a pretty consistent literary theme, to be honest, or narrative theme.
I mean, it makes sense to be able to use that.
I guess I always just feel frustrated by, like, whatever, we'll talk about it more once more of the power is revealed. Like, once you understand some of the things that the power is capable of doing, there are some issues that I have with it, actually.
Okay, I'm gonna remember that.
But yeah, we can put a bookmark in that for now.
Yeah. Okay, so other than that, the other thing that happens here, which is super important, is Julian lets Nynaeve know that the women that they're looking for, so Leandrin and all of them, are guests of the High Lord Salmon. So she ends up going back into Mother Gwenna's house and then realizes that she has been set into this kind of like trap, where Leandrin appears. She's there with Rihanna. They what's the word I'm looking for? They block her so that she can't.
They shield her
so she can't use her powers. And she realizes this and then punches both. This is just great. Could I just say, like, this immediately brought Nynaeve up in my eyes. She just punches both of them in the face, just trying to get away. It's like, no,
yeah,
like, I can't use the power. I will use my fists.
No, I think I did like that part a lot. Like, it shows a certain level of, I don't know, just over reliance on the power on their end. They're so used to getting their way with just the power that they don't realize the kind of threat. And that, in a way, that actually shows the arrogance of Aes Sedai in general, of like, I have the power, you can't touch me. And like White Cloaks, not that I like them or agree with most of their stuff, but they're like, I'm just gonna kill you with an arrow in the dark, like you're like, I'll just assassinate you. And like the Aes Sedai are just kind of, they're arrogant to their own danger. Like, it's, to their own downfall. In a way, it's nice to see that arrogance being met with pain,
physical pain. So, but they do end up getting her and taking her with Iguain and Elaine. They've already got them.
So Julian's betrayed them.
Yeah. Yep. And so they're going to the High Lord, who's actually Bilal, and Leandrin's like, yep, you guys are you're all bait. You're part of the plan that Bilal's put together, and going there.
Yeah. There's a funny thing about the bait that we'll talk about later, I think.
Okay. Okay, so then the next chapter, In Search of a Remedy. So now we're back with Matt and Tom, and who's still sick. And they end up going, Matt decides, he's like, we got to go get you looked at. And Tom doesn't want anything to do with it. He's totally does not want to have any concoctions made or all this stuff. But they take him, Matt takes Tom to Mother Gwenna's house because he remembers seeing it. And while he's there, they have this whole conversation. He kind of is paying attention to her accent. She's paying attention to his. And he notices these 3 horses out back and comments on it because it's kind of strange. And she makes a comment that she knew 3 girls who had his accent. So Matt describes them, he names them, and that's Mother Gwenna's obviously like, well, they didn't use those names, but the description matches and all this kind of stuff. And it's very obvious that Matt is panicked and looking for them. And she says that, you just missed them. They were with women who could, they left with women who could channel basically. Yep. Which immediately relieves Matt because he's assuming all Aes Sedai are they're going to be Aes Sedai, so they're good.
Yeah.
That's when Mother Gwenna is like, well, no, they were fighting.
They fought trapped lionfish or something like that.
Trapped lionfish in a net trying to get free from them. And that's when Matt's like, that doesn't make any sense and is concerned.
Yeah, it's that super sucks.
Yeah. So he decides he's gonna go find them, and he leaves Tom there against his wishes.
Yeah, which is really funny. Tom's like, no. And Matt's like, just get better, Tom. Goodbye.
Yeah. And he says goodbye, but he says it what's the exact lines? It's been an honor knowing you, or something like that. As if Tom's going to die.
No, it's he's gonna die. He thinks he's gonna die because he's going to rescue the girl. He's gonna go face the Black Aja.
I read it as if Matt was saying Tom was gonna die.
I mean, it might have been him just being kind of a roguish dick about it. But it might have been funny anyways.
I probably just misunderstood the text. That makes more sense because Matt's gonna go be reckless, probably.
Yeah. That's what he does best.
Exactly. Okay, so chapter 53, A Flow in the Spirit. Fight. So Perrin is again working with the blacksmith for another day, and Fail's still watching him. And that's when Moraine lets them know that Rand is there, and she thinks that Perrin and Fail and Loyal should go back to Tarvalin, and her and Lan are going to go to the Stone of Tear. And afterwards, Perrin ends up he goes upstairs and finds Fail on the floor in a room, and she's next to this small hedgehog sort of thing. So anyway, Moraine does some pressing with the innkeeper, and they learn that the innkeeper did let 2 women come in to bring a present for Moraine. So this is clearly a trap that was set up for her, and Fael is now in it. And Moraine believes she is alive, but not in her body, which was a really weird way of saying. She just basically says she's trapped somewhere. And she is adamant that Perrin not go in the room, because she's like, whoever goes in there, because Perrin's he's like, why aren't you helping her? And she's like, well, if I go in there, I'm just gonna fall into whoever goes there is gonna fall into the trap. And I thought it was very Moraine the way she said this, but also very just cold. She was just like, well, we're all gonna fall into the trap if we go in there, so let's just not. I have other things to go do, so I'm gonna go do them. And she just leaves.
Well, think of there's this random girl who is probably not that important.
Mhm.
And she just took the hit on this trap, and Moraine's like, oh sweet, like I'm not trapped now. Like they think I'm gone, and I have a Forsaken to kill. Like she thinks she's gonna go kill a Forsaken, and
Right.
I mean that's worth the life of one random girl she thinks is annoying.
Totally get it. It was just like the phrasing of everything was,
Yeah.
it was very I thought it was perfect. Like I wouldn't change it. I thought it was amusing. But anyway, so she leaves, and you know, Perrin is explaining this trap that's happened to her to Loyal, because he's asking, and then
Oh, this is the part that I told you I got chills on, actually.
Him explaining it to Loyal, and like
No, Loyal's response,
mm-hmm.
and Perrin's observation about Loyal,
Mm-hmm.
because he's like I'm gonna go there, but I'm gonna be exposed. So can you protect me?
Mm-hmm.
And like Loyal's ears get low, and he said, and he says like, while I yet live, something, like no one will touch you, no one will come into the room, and like the part where Perrin is looking at him, and he's like, he remembers the stories he's heard about how Ogier are implacable enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And and Loyal's just like, I'll die before anyone gets in here, like, and it's just like you see this side of Loyal that it's like, oh yeah, I wouldn't want to piss that guy off for real. Like,
right,
he's dangerous to the extreme. If he's pressed, like he's affable until it's time to go.
Right.
It also makes me think of, and you haven't read these, I know you told me, the Patrick Rothfuss books. Mm-hmm. There's three things all wise men fear. Mm-hmm. And the storm at sea, something about something about the moon, I forget, but then one of them is, and the anger of a gentleman. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, that just fits Loyal so perfect, because he's so gentle, he doesn't want to fight, but it's like you just see this side of him that you're like, oh man, I almost hope someone does come and mess with Perrin,
just like, to see that side,
just to see. Yeah. And just like a tiny spoiler, mm-hmm, from some other part of this, like you at some point you get to see that side of Loyal.
Ooh, I'm excited for that then.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so like you were saying, he's gonna guard it because Perrin's gonna go in there anyway, even though Moraine's like, no, you're just gonna get sucked in. Because he's basically wondering if where she's stuck is she's stuck in the wolf dream. Like, can Perrin, mm-hmm, go in there and get her? So he does, and Hopper meets him there and is like, Hopper basically tells him, you need to leave because you're gonna probably die here.
I got chills on this part too, because Perrin's like, now he's gone through the transition. Robert Jordan does such a good job of repetition of like, he calls him, so Perrin calls her Zareen, calls her Zareen, calls her Zareen, calls her Zareen, and she's wearing him down, and then she gets trapped, and now he's like, I'm only ever gonna call you Fael ever again, and clearly has strong feelings for her. And so then he goes into the wolf dream. Hopper's like, you can't be here, blah blah blah, same old crap. And mm-hmm, Perrin doesn't care, and he's like, as long as the Falcon is trapped, like I don't care about my own life. And then Hopper's like, then we hunt. Mm-hmm.
It was really good.
Just intense.
Yes. Yeah. So, and then we go into chapter 54, into the stone, and we leave Perrin for a little bit at least. So we start with Matt. So he's decided if he can get up the wall of the stone, like maybe from a adjacent rooftop or something like that, because he's seen someone scaling the wall of the stone, so he's figuring like this could possibly be a thing. And then all of a sudden he like feels that there's blades at his throat. So basically all of these Aiel have surrounded him and come out. And they're on the roof. But then also Julian then arrives.
Well,
conveniently, can I just say?
Luck and Taviran.
Okay, fair.
That's why I love the presence of Taviran, because it's like it makes all things so much more plausible.
Right. So he arrives and he's like, well, he's questioning the Aiel of why they're there and why they're on the roof, and the Aiel are questioning him the exact same thing.
I love how like they startle Matt, and he just like knocks the spear away and starts fighting and knocks him over and fight, and then they get him again. But then like he just keeps, I don't know, I just like, for some reason it always reminds me of, and I know that it's not even that popular of a movie, but like the second Matrix movie, Matrix, what I don't even remember, it's not Revolutions, Reloaded, maybe, yeah, it's Reloaded. There's this scene where they're like in a car fighting these weird wraith things, and they're like trying to, like, I don't know, there's so much weird stuff going on, like they're trying to drive, but they're trying to fight, trying to shoot, and use knives and cut seatbelts and buckle seatbelts, and there's like so much weird, crazy stuff that's going on, like almost in the periphery because the person's driving at the same time. And I don't know, like I always really liked that particular scene in that movie, and for some reason this, like Matt doesn't even know who he's fighting, and yet he's just like tripping people and messing with them, and like just he's like fighting blind, and yet he's still like everyone's operating on imperfect information. For some reason I always thought of the parallel between that. I don't know if it's even valid. I just always, they're linked in my mind now. So, but
it's a good point.
Yeah. I just like that Matt's like, I'll fight for, oh no, never mind. No, let's try to talk our way out of this now.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, so the leader, his name is Ruark. And he basically clarifies, he's like, I'm not gonna harm you if you guys don't like sound an alarm type thing, and vice versa. So they kind of have this like pack and go their own ways, and then
and they see Rand climbing the walls. They don't recognize him as Rand, but they see him climbing, like because Matt's like, some other fool's already climbing.
Yeah. So then this is again, so the Julian is saying, because Matt's like, I gotta go find these girls and rescue them, and Julian's like, well, I can help you do it. Well, let's pretend that you're a thief and I'm taking you to the jail cell.
Right. They both want to rescue the girls, because Julian feels bad.
Yeah.
Because he's been powered into betraying the girls, like he's been forced to, essentially.
Right, because Leandrin probably compelled him.
Yeah, like we've established, she can already make people do kind of what she wants them to do. Yeah.
So they agree to do this, and Matt decides to create this diversion because he's got fireworks on him still. So he does that, and then they find this like hole in the wall for the stone to go in.
He throws it. Well, he throws the fireworks in, and it blows a hole into the side of the stone.
So he goes in, which is just
yeah.
So
just fun.
I'm trying. I understand the logic of it, of like throwing a firework and then there's a hole blown into the wall, but then also I feel like almost anything now, there's a little piece of me that's going to be like, is that just too good to be true? Like, is that a Taviran thing, that it would just hit the wall and blow a hole in the wall so you can get in there?
Well, I mean, it's already established that he has a huge amount of fireworks, and that they're enormously powerful. I don't think it's much of a stretch, frankly.
Right.
Like, you throw a bunch of, I've worked with explosives before. As ex-military, like I've gotten to mess around with C4 and stuff, and I don't know, like obviously fireworks are pretty different from C4, but I'll say that in movies sometimes they overdo things. A lot of times though they undersell explosions.
Okay.
for what things can do. Like
Mhm.
you like just a grenade, it's far more terrifying in real life, in fact, just
Oh,
you know, than in like movies. Like you feel it in like it's really amazing, actually. It's really interesting stuff, but at the same time, I didn't think this is too far of a stretch. Like they've already
mhm.
established that fireworks are incredibly dangerous. If you set them on fire, everyone's like, "Oh shoot! Don't! Why are you doing? Like, why are you messing with that?"
Right.
Like, and maybe their fireworks are way different than our fireworks.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, um,
And and if not, I mean, Taviran probably does help.
it's not gonna hurt.
It can't hurt. Yeah.
Yeah. So they go in, and there's these defenders of the stone in there, and they immediately start fighting, and both of them now are like, at first
Well,
Matt's overwhelmed, and then Julian joins him, and they just start fighting their way through.
I love it, man. Yeah,
Mhm.
like they're just fighting back to back with their stabs and just
Yeah.
beating the crap out of people. And Julian's like, "Oh, they're gonna execute me," but he doesn't ever show any sign of willingness to back down. He's like, "I'm
Mhm.
gonna keep doing this,"
Yeah, so they both keep going.
even though he's
um
like panicking. And Matt's like, "Well, Matt's like, I'm just gonna die to the Black Odds anyway." Like, well, we'll just, whatever. Matt doesn't care.
Matt does not care.
He's just marching in.
Yeah, so they're doing that, and then while they're doing this, we switch to Rand, and he hears this the alarm sounds are these alarms have started going off once Matt and Julian have gone in there and start fighting them. So Rand ends up hearing that, but he kind of just like doesn't pay any attention to it because he knows he's close to Kalendor, so he just keeps going his own way. And then we go to Iguain, and she's been dreaming about Matt, and now she's dreaming that Matt's coming, or about Rand, sorry, and now she's dreaming that Matt is coming for them. And she starts remembering what happened when Leandrin captured them, and she wakes up, they're all in a cell together, and they know that they're being shielded. Nynaeve's like, "We're still shielded. I've tried to heal you, I can't do it." And this is when Iguain realizes they are bait for Rand. They're bait for Rand to come and rescue them. So she decides that she's going to enter the dream world and figure out a way to save them. And by doing that, she realizes in the dream world that she's not shielded, so she can channel there. And she finds Joya in the dream world, shields her, and then continues trying to find a way to rescue basically herself and Nynaeve and Elaine, which is pretty cool. I like how Iguain is starting to come into her own here.
Yeah. It's just yes. So I agree with that. Just like completely on its own separate thing. It's cool to see like she's not just fumbling around in the world of dreams and like totally lost and bumbling around. Like she's actually using her knowledge as a weapon.
Yeah.
And I mean, I especially like that she's like, "Well, I won't be shielded in Telera and Rayad." Like,
yeah.
And there's this moment at some point in the future where she moves like further steps. It's really cool to see her develop, especially as a dreamer. But I was like, so why would Joya Bier be there?
Yeah, I was wondering that too.
And then eventually, like she starts seeing the other girl, the girl who's locked him up. Like,
yeah,
they've already established that if you're I guess if she's touching the ring and she's kind of benched, like she's drifting off. I guess they did kind of make that better. Like because their captor who's holding the shield is conveniently just appears there.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you can actually impact her here. But I mean, if she has one of the stolen rings to help her get into it, then. And I guess I'm skipping ahead a little bit. Sorry.
No, you're good. Okay, so she's doing this, and then we're back with Perrin. Perrin's still in the wolf dream with Hopper.
Hold on a sec. So
yes.
one thing I wanted to point out or ask you.
Okay.
And all right, so she's like kind of tortures Joya Bier just a little bit. Like finds a way to just like keep hitting her with air without her even having to expend effort. which is I like an endless loop, but I, I've always liked the idea of that. But so at one point, Iguain is like, okay, I'm just gonna leave you here, whatever. I'll deal with you later. And she's like, man, I'm just gonna have to learn how to cut throats because I don't want to have to torture people anymore. This sucks. And Joya Bier, of course, she's like, oh, like terrified of it. And I was like, why don't you just cut her throat? I don't know. Like to me, I was like, she's gonna kill you or torture, then kill you and your family and everyone if she can. She is way too dangerous. Like, and she's already threatened. Like she's already like, I feel like it would even be something that would be defensible, legal, at least in a lot of countries, at least modern countries. Maybe I'm just totally off, but I was like, why? What's so wrong with doing that with an enemy that is going to clearly kill you if she gets the chance?
Right.
Instant she gets a chance.
I'm wondering if it's more of she's not comfortable with the idea, and like maybe she's using it as a bluff of sorts to get people to cave to her and give her what she wants without actually having to.
Well, yeah, but I guess I'm like, why do you think that's a bad thing, Iguain, to cut this horrible woman's throat who's done atrocious things anyways? I don't know, maybe it's a form of vigilante justice that I should abhor, but to me, I really do value life. At the same time, if I have an implacable enemy who's just going to kill me the second they possibly can and they're in my power, and they'll like, they wouldn't stop it, like they'll torture my kids and do it, like I don't think that there's a moral reason not to just end them, like not torture them, not prolong the agony, but like I feel like that's just common sense self-defense kind of thing. Maybe you have a different perspective. I don't know, maybe I'm just a horrible person.
I don't think you're a horrible person. I think it totally like depends on the situation. Like you're saying, like if someone's coming after your boys, you're obviously going to do something.
Yeah, but if I know that they're going to, if they can anyways, like I don't know if I'd be willing to just let them have the opportunity and then I have to react.
Right. You'd rather be proactive about it.
Well, I mean, yeah, I would. I think, well, and of course, if it's in the context of protecting my boys, I'm sure I'd be moved to do even more things. I mean,
right.
And so would almost any parent, I think.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know why she's hesitant to it.
Like, I mean, it's uncomfortable, probably. Like, I wouldn't love the idea of cutting someone's throat in cold blood, kind of, but I don't know. Maybe anyways, I'm making too much of a deal of it. It just seems to me like they present it as, of course I would never do that. Of course that, like,
right.
That's horrible. Like, I would never stoop to just cutting throats. That's not what a good person does. And I'm like, why doesn't a good person, like, because what if she escapes and she just murders you later?
Yeah.
Like, it seems a little bit short-sighted to me, but maybe I just have a ruthless streak that I'm not aware of.
Maybe Iguain just hasn't tapped into it yet.
Right. Well, and she kind of did reference that. She's like, oh, I'm sick of this. I'm gonna have to learn how to cut throats. And she just joked about it, kind of. But
yeah.
Anyways, we can move on. It's a minor point. I just it has always driven me crazy. I'm like, if I ever write a book, my main character, the one that everyone should be rooting for, is going to have a level of ruthlessness that a lot of other books don't really have. Like, because I think my protagonist would absolutely just like, oh, yeah, you're not living through this interaction. Like, we're not going to be mean about it, but this needs to like not be a thing.
I like it.
Maybe.
Like it. Like it.
Thanks. Let's move on.
Okay.
I'm done.
Okay. So yeah, so then we go back to Perrin. So he's obviously still with Hopper. And they are killing or Hopper helps Perrin kill these guards that are near a door. And they were I thought this was interesting. They were startled to see wolves. And so obviously Perrin's in there as like a wolf, which I thought was, I think this was when I don't know why, for whatever reason, I just assumed he was himself when he went in there and just was with the wolves. So
well,
has he always, am I just connecting this super late? Like I'm
okay. So
is he just accepting it more?
They haven't really explained it that much so far, but Attila and Riyadh, your mind controls what form you take. Okay. So for instance, if I was Attila and Riyadh, I would need to find some way to fix in my mind that I'm wearing a gray shirt and blue pants, because otherwise just stray random thoughts would affect my clothing and my appearance. And you can change the way your face looks. Like it's all, you eventually learn that it's all very controllable. And so Perrin doesn't necessarily realize that he's doing this, but like he's a wolf for a lot of this. But then once he goes in and actually tries, then he tries to free Fail. He has hands and a hammer to be able to start taking her chains out. So like this demonstrates his image of self is, it changes based on his circumstances.
Okay, cool. So he's clearly a wolf at the time of that. And then they do break down this lock in this door. And he finds, like you said, Fail's in there. And he's smashing these chains and bolts that are holding her down. And then she just disappears. And can I just say that when this happened, when she disappeared this first time, I was like, I literally just said to Adam last week that I didn't think Fail was going anywhere anytime soon. And like, I legitimately was like, she's dead. Like that was my immediate reaction right there. I was like, she's dead. Okay. She's gone for whatever reason. But anyway, he just decides that he has to continue trying to find her because he realizes that it was like an illusion and it wasn't actually her.
Yeah, I just wonder. So this is another one of those, like he creates things in the book, in one book, and then it just doesn't happen elsewhere. Like where did they get these like random people that they killed? Because it's pretty apparent, at least if you've read the other books, like these are real people that they killed. They're not just illusions of people. Like he tasted their blood, like they're real people. Somehow they're stuck in the world of dreams. Like someone's just like placed them there as like part of this really elaborate, weird trap, that like multi-tiered trap if in case anyone tries to go and free this girl who doesn't even matter really.
Right. Well, I mean, they assumed the trap was for Moraine originally, right?
Yeah, but the Forsaken also respect the Aes Sedai Zero,
right,
as well. Like they just like always try to shove them aside. And I mean, you could even see Bilal in his reaction later. It just like belies that. He just shows that his disdain. But you're right. I mean, the trap was for someone more important than what they would have placed on Fael for sure. But anyways, it was just a weird thing. They just randomly get some goons to just hang out there to be slaughtered potentially.
I guess so. You need henchmen.
Well, you do, to make sure that the person you've wrapped tightly in chains can't somehow escape.
So so Perrin and Hopper go off to keep trying to find her, and then we go back to Matt, and Matt is still fighting. And now he's fighting one of the High Lords.
High Lord Darlin.
High Lord Darlin. And he also thinks he's seen Rand at this point, but he doesn't believe that it's actually Rand. So everyone's spotting him essentially, possibly.
Yep.
But him and Julian, Matt and Julian are basically, they're just trying to find a shortcut that the High Lords would use to get to the jail cells, because that's where the girls most likely will be.
Yep.
Excuse me. Okay, so chapter 55. What is written in prophecy? This was a big one.
Oof.
Yeah. So, okay, so we start with Rand. He goes into the Heart of the Stone because that's where Kalendor is. And Bilal is already there waiting for him and trying to get him to take Kalendor. And he, reveals to Rand that Kalendor is a sangreal. And they have this whole, I felt like this interesting conversation back and forth where it was almost like Bilal was realizing that Rand had no memory of being Lews Therin, and he's like kind of reiterating to him, like, well, you took on like this sheep herder's form, and like it's almost like he's like judging him, but also trying to make him remember his past. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting thing to do before you try to kill somebody, but anyway, so Bilal creates this like sword of Blackfire. He uses the one power to do this, and then because Rand isn't taking Kalendor, and he's basically like, you need to take Kalendor or you're going to die, like one or the other. And Rand creates this sword out of red flame to fight back with him, and they're fighting, and that's when Rand realizes that Bilal is actually like a true blade master, because Bilal is now, based off the moves he's doing, guiding Rand towards Kalendor, like he's backing him into this corner, so to speak. I
thought it was really interesting. Sorry, can I interject for one sec? I thought it was really interesting here because so Rand knew he had no claim to the Heron Mark blade, and it's like, well, you just killed a blade master last book. Like, can you stop? Like, clear, and he's even been told the rules, so he's just being a stone blind idiot. I think is what they call some people in this book sometimes, but he's being stubborn. Anyways. First off, I'll say it's been really discordant. We haven't heard from Rand hardly at all, except for like killing random people.
Yeah.
And like just almost like a fever dream of like, but they won't get me. Like they won't. I'll show them all. It feels like he's not even in his right mind, kind of. And then we see him, and it's like, oh, here's the character that you haven't even seen this whole book, but I guess we're just going to hear his whole thoughts, and he's suddenly a point of view character after the whole book. It's very discordant to me, of like, and he's fighting someone we don't know anything about either. Like, we don't have any context hardly. It's very strange. But then I did think it was interesting though, because Bilal's talking about their past, and he's like, do you remember when we read about swords and learned how to kill men with this archaic sport they used to call fencing or whatever? And it's like Bilal is in a lot of ways, like he kind of pioneered the use of swordcraft alongside Lews Therin back in the Age of Legends. Like,
so they started it in a way.
Yeah, because back then there was there's crazy technology. It's like, I mean, I think this sword play is cool to watch and all that stuff. I don't have much interest in learning it myself though. It's certainly not very practical as a day-to-day thing. Like, it's a cool hobby, and I respect people who want to do it. It just it's similar to that, and these guys are even further removed. They're like, really, people used to kill people, like people used to fight like this. Let's like practice it to the point that we're masters at it somehow. I don't know, it's just kind of an interesting thing. Whatever, just a window to the past.
I actually, like, out of all of because I know I said I didn't expect another fight, but out of all of them, I actually really enjoyed this one because it felt more like there was this true past to them, other than the thing with Balsamon that annoys me is that every single time we see Balsamon, he's like, "I'll get you, lose there." Like, it's the same line every single time. And I felt like with Bilal, we were actually getting snippets of information. Like, he was like, "Oh yeah," like exactly what you just said. Like, he's talking about sword fighting and all this stuff, and he's surprised that Rand doesn't remember his past. Like, it's this whole. It felt more like a genuine interaction, which sounds like a weird thing to say about someone who's trying to kill another person, but
it's true though. In a lot of ways, yeah, but Balsamon he's pretty flat as far as he's like this weird villain and I'll say this is the last book I think that he really plagues us in this way.
Okay.
Like Balsamon is like, and in some ways you kind of needed some really flat character because I mean we've talked about it in other books. Like, what's Rand gonna do in book 1 against someone as powerful, as obviously powerful as Balsamon? Like, you needed some kind of weird, almost like mystical, metaphysical way for Rand to win, anyways. And so having him beat someone he's had a past with, who's like a blade master, all this cool stuff, has this whole resume, so to speak, it's less interest, like it becomes less and less plausible. And so in a way you kind of needed Balsamon, but now Rand is more complex. He's a blade master himself. He's starting to learn to use the power. He's starting to strategize a little bit here and there.
Yeah. And you're seeing like his growth as well, so it makes sense to go to the next step.
Yeah, so we see Bilal here, and if we don't know much about him, but yeah, he's a blade master.
Yeah, so
he's a dick.
He's a dick. Yeah, so him and Rand are fighting, and while they're fighting, the Aiel and the Defenders of the Stone come in, and they start fighting. So there's another like big battle going on at the same time. And then all of a sudden, Moiraine appears, like right as Bilal's saying, like, "You're gonna die if you don't take Kalandor." And she surprises both of them, and Bilal's like, "Well, I'll just use my free hand to kill Moiraine and get rid of her." And before he can even do it, she just shoots balefire at him.
Why doesn't she just shoot balefire at him? Why does she have to be dramatic and be like, she like draws attention to herself?
I'm like, why weren't you doing that in the last 2 books? Like,
because she didn't know how to do it in the last 2 books. She's more dangerous now.
So she kills him, which I thought.
Balefire is a scary thing too, though. Like, there's a reason why it's like you don't want anyone to know how to do it, because it literally so if you and I are in the Wheel of Time and I died, like, super sad, that's tragic, horrifying,
horrible,
but at the end of the day, like, I'm still a thread in the pattern and I'll be rewoven at some point and reborn.
Oh, okay.
But like that's how it works. Like my soul, like, but Balefire,
I see where you're going here.
Balefire burns that thread out of the pattern.
Right.
It stops them from existing at all. Like the idea, like, if you don't believe that there's an afterlife or anything, the idea of death is maybe not as scary. Like, if you die and you think there's an afterlife, you're like, oh well, I should probably do at least the bare minimum to get it, to make myself a better situation for eternity, right? If you believe that, but if you believe that you are going to actually exist in some form forever, in perpetuity, and you might not ever remember all of it, but like you'll have a future for thousands, millions of years, the idea of maybe just being snuffed out is actually somewhat terrifying.
That's yikes. That is a scary thought.
Right. And so Moiraine's just like, all right, we did it to the Dark Hounds, and I guess we'll do it to Forsaken. So he's gone. He's gone.
So she does that. Okay, so then she tells Rand though that like he needs to take Kalendor because it's his to use and he should take it. It's his birthright to do this. Only the Dragon Reborn can do this. And then all of a sudden she gets hurled across the room from Black Lightning, and you know, Rand looks up and there's Balsamon in the air. He sees his fiery eyeballs up there. And he tells Rand, it's gonna blow your mind, that Rand's gonna die.
No.
Yeah.
He said that.
He said that. He went there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That rapscallion.
So anyway, so Rand, he kind of like jumps towards Kalendor like he's gonna grab it, and he does. And as soon as he does, he can feel like how much power he's able to, you know, wield with this. And
yeah, it's
a scary situation. He kind of has to control himself so he doesn't go mad on the spot. And then Balsamon ends up fleeing to, like, he just like takes off, and Rand's like, oh, I guess I'm gonna finish this, and follows him. And it just seems, it's so weird. Balsamon's like, yeah, you're gonna die, and then he runs away.
Could we mostly skip their fight stuff?
Yeah, man.
Okay, because it's weird and dumb.
It's weird.
Okay.
This is what you were talking about earlier, though, because now we go back to Iguain in the dream world, where she sees where the cell is and sees a Miko out front of it, who's kind of like guarding it, and can tell that she's got a Tarian Grail in her hand. She's drifting in and out. So she ends up she channels air to hold her, and then spirit to shield her, so that when a Miko flickers back into the dream world, she can kind of hold her there, and then channels earth then to break the lock open on the jail cell. And which she does all of this, and then she decides, okay, we're good. She leaves the dream world and wakes up, and the door is still shut. They're still shielded. But Amiko is still bound out front. So it kind of half worked, I guess.
Yeah. So you have to admire their tenacity, because she's like, well, crap. Okay, I have to go back to sleep. And
exactly.
And like, you know, this is where it would be handy if she could just cut Amiko's throat.
Right.
Then problem solved. No more shielding.
Right. Exactly.
But she can't do that though. Like, that's so.
I think it's just against her. I mean, right now, at least, I don't know how she's going to develop later on, but it seems like it's against her like character.
Yeah, but she's going to get whatever. Yeah, you're right. Me arguing against what she's willing to do, it doesn't make any sense. But anyways, so yeah, she's trying to go back to sleep.
Yeah, so she's trying to go back to sleep, and then we switch to Matt. So Matt and Julian have now entered this dungeon where the jail cells are, and they see a Miko who's bound, but is mentally like aware of what's going on. And you know, Julian kind of warns Matt that that's an Aes Sedai and to be careful, and he's like, it's fine. Kind of recklessly saunters over there anyway and takes the key off of her to open the jail cell, which he does, and he's
pretty cautious. Like he's like, what's going, this is so weird, but all right, I'll take it.
Yeah, takes it, unlocks the door, and then you know, Nynaeve and Elaine are basically kneeling or whatever over top of Iguain because she's trying to go back. She is asleep, and then they are surprised to see Matt, and then even more surprised to see Julian. Iguain's woken up at this part and decide they will deal with him later. So they ain't happy to see him
or Matt.
Yeah, they're not really. I was actually a little surprised that they weren't very happy to see Matt.
This is one of my very least favorite parts in almost the whole series. Matt goes into an impregnable fortress.
Yeah,
he blows a hole in it, fights at his own, like, for no gain, except he's gonna face down the Black Aja, the Defenders of the Stone, all this stuff, and he doesn't know that that the IEL are going to be attacking at the same time. He doesn't know that Rand is going to be part of. He just knows that he is going to go in there and do it the best he can to save these girls for no reason other than that he cares about, like, he doesn't want them to be imprisoned.
Yep.
So at great personal risk, right? He's
right.
And they treat him with total disdain. They don't say a single word of thanks. And they like lift him up with the power and like threaten him.
Yeah, because he like criticizes them when they leave. Nynaeve punches Amiko, which ends up breaking the shield because she knocks Amiko out. And he's like criticizing her for, you know, hitting someone who couldn't defend themselves. And then they, you know, it just seemed very, I don't know.
It's total horse shit.
I could see I could see them doing it to Julian if it was just Julian arriving by himself.
Sure.
If it's like, oh, I came to make amends. Absolutely could totally see that. It just felt very weird that they did it to Matt. And then, so this happens, and then they decide like they're gonna go find the Black Aja. So Matt and Julian, like Matt still, after all of this, is like, well, I'm gonna go with you guys and make sure you're good.
Right. Yeah. So yeah. Anyways, I just, someone comes to rescue you and actually does, like, maybe they're frustrated because they were like, they kind of had a line on rescuing themselves. Like they might have been able to with Iguain if she did the right things in the dream world, but like just the fact that he's there, where he is, he's fought High Lords, he's blown up things, like he's faced Aiel, he's beat Defenders of the Stone. And he's risking the Black Aja just killing him outright with the power with no defense. And then they just don't even say a single word of thanks or kind word. They threaten him and leave. Just disgusting. Yeah.
It was very weird. I didn't like this part of the girls. So
let's continue.
Yeah. So then we go back to Perrin, and Perrin is still trying to rescue Fael. He's found her multiple times, and each time he finds her, she's just, disappeared again. It's an illusion. And then Hopper finally takes him to another set of doors, and it's like, okay, like beyond here, like let's go. So Perrin goes in and he sees Fael there. She's bound, she's chained again, like all this kind of stuff. And then here, as soon as he goes to her, like all these falcons just start attacking him, and he's trying to free her. And he finally does manage to break the chain, even though he's got all these falcons attacking him. And he does this, and then he wakes up. So he wakes up in the inn, and she's there, and she's wiping the blood off of his face. So, and they exchange some whatever words, terms of endearment nonsense. They clearly care for each other. So yeah. And then we go back to Rand. We'll skip all this battle stuff because it's just a whole bunch of weirdness, but he does kill Balsamon in the dream world and then exits the dream world, and Balsamon is dead at his feet. And then he kind of shouts at the Aiel and defenders to kind of stop, the defenders of the stone to stop fighting, because he's the Dragon Reborn. And interestingly enough, I thought both sides, so the Aiel and the defenders of the stone, both of them immediately like kneel to him. So I thought that was amusing because they're fighting each other, but they're gonna
they both acknowledge him as their master, so to speak.
So any thoughts there before the last chapter?
No, not really. I mean, he beat Balsamon again, but I think the biggest thing is there's finally a body.
Yes, there is a body, and that is a big thing, I thought.
Right. So that isn't necessarily, they even mention who Balsamon is here in the next chapter, but like this isn't the last time we've seen this person, but it's not nearly as grating.
Okay, so in the last chapter, People of the Dragon, so Matt is kind of like remembering fighting, and he's with the girls and Moraine and Rurik's there. They're all kind of together, and Moraine's explaining that Perrin is with a companion, and they both may be in danger.
Sure.
And then she kind of shows that she found this seal, and it's intact, and it's the first one that hasn't been broken. And she notes that every time, Rand's fought Balsamon, there's been a seal found relatively nearby. So there's only, 4 more or something like that, imprisoning the Dark One. Anyway, so then during all this, Ruark starts talking about how he shows them this dragon mark that's on his arm, and starts talking about how they get it. And Moraine realizes that, and is kind of surprised to realize that the Aiel are the people of the dragon, which, I mean, would make sense when you think about all the similarities that Rand has physically to Aiel, and how he can, Nynaeve and all of them have kind of mixed him up with Aiel before, or note that he looks similar to them. So just a fun little thing. But this was what I thought was more important in terms of Balsamon leaving a body, because Matt is like, well, Rand's killed the Dark One, and Moraine is basically explaining that Balsamon couldn't have been the Dark One because he left behind a body, and if it had been the Dark One, there wouldn't be a body to be left behind. So this is where she says, like, they start thinking about who it could have been, and they think it might have been Ishmael.
Ishmael. That's how they pronounce it here. Well, so I think it's funny because the subtitles in the Wheel of Time show have the Dark One who confronts Rand. They name him as Ishmael in the subtitles.
I noticed that, and I was like, aren't those 2 different people? And then I was like, maybe that's just his name. Nope,
it's just a Forsaken.
Yeah. So this is who they think it was, possibly.
So it is.
Yes.
Hashtag spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, so then afterwards, the Berling comes in, and she hands Moraine this note and says it was from this, beautiful woman, and says that Louis Theron is hers and always has been, but she will leave him in Moraine's custody for now. And signed, Lanfear.
That's sweet of her.
Yeah, super, super sweet of her / creepy. Yeah. So very intrigued by that whole thing there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway. But then also Moraine does reveal to the group that, Matt blew the horn of Valir, and he's Ta'Veren as well. So all of this important information to know going into the next book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Next book is exciting. It's a good book.
I'm real based off. And this is kind of what I was saying with like how the characters were left. I'm really excited. Like, I want to know what's going on with Perrin right away.
Yeah.
So surprises no one I know.
Well, gosh, you can't. So every book you kind of have like one main-ish character. The other ones can be featured, and sometimes certain characters are just not in a book at all. Rarely, but there is this next book. You almost think that the main character, in a way, is Perrin. Actually, there's a lot of focus on him at the very least. There's important things that happen with other characters too, though, so you can't quite say that it's Perrin's book or something. It's
okay.
Solely his, but yeah, it's good. It's my favorite out of all of them.
I'm excited to start it. I already bought it.
Ooh, exciting! I already downloaded it. I've owned it for years.
Well, I meant I bought it on Audible. You know what I mean?
I do.
Okay, so who would you say is the Mac here? Because I don't know who annoys me the most.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, would you classify anyone as annoying based off what they?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's real easy.
Okay. Who do you think?
Real easy.
Okay.
Iguain, Elaine, and Nynaeve.
Because of how they treat Matt.
Yeah. Well, and they browbeat him again at the end there. Like, they're always like, oh, stupid Matt, like, shut up, Matt, like, stop talking to us, Matt. Like, and he's just trying to get, and he's not like the nicest, but he just saved them. And at so much risk.
I know.
And they don't respect that even a single bit. I just hate that. It bugs the heck out of me. So yeah, like all three of them should get like Mac times 5, most annoying character by a huge margin.
Yeah, I don't think you could pick anyone else realistically, even if that hadn't, I mean.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Like,
I mean, Baalzamon. But then again, he had the decency to finally actually die, so that was good.
So not that annoying. Yeah, because Rand is off doing Rand things. Moraine's doing Moraine things. Perrin is being cool.
Yeah, they're all being heroic.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't think you could pick anybody else.
You don't have to.
No. All right. The only character that I found sus in these chapters was Julian. Even though like we do like know he feels guilty, he was compelled, he still is just, I don't know. I still don't really trust him now.
Okay. That's fair.
So
that's mostly gonna have to be the rating you have, because I know who's sus and who isn't. So
I know.
You didn't think Berylane was sus a little bit?
I didn't. Well, maybe a little bit, but not a ton.
She just shows up and she's like, I normally don't hand out messages, but here you go. There's a message from Forsaken.
Maybe.
Oh, well, whatever. I don't.
The other one that I had kind of fixated on, and I don't know if it's necessarily sus, I just like made a mental note of it, is that Mother Gwenna knew what happened. Like, she knew what happened to the girls, introduced the girls to Julian, and just like, is fine. Like, there was no repercussion really that we know of to her.
True. I mean, but I don't think she needed any kind of repercussion.
No, but she also, I guess you wouldn't get involved if there's people, like, if she obviously saw that they were fighting to not be taken, because she describes that to Matt,
right,
and did nothing. But I guess if you can see that they're able to channel, you wouldn't intervene.
Well, she's like wrapped in flows of air, isn't she, the whole time? Like, like she can't actually physically move.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Now you're gonna make me think about Berylane.
Excellent.
Okay, so then next week we'll start the Rising Shadow. So we'll do the first 10 chapters. I downloaded it and I looked at it. There's no prologue, so we'll actually do chapters 1 to 10.
Shadow Rising. Okay.
Yeah. The Rising Shadow. Shadow Rising? Did I type it backwards? I might have typed it backwards.
It's not the Rising Shadow.
Maybe I just had
maybe I'm just taking crazy pills. Let's find out.
It's totally possible that I just typed it backwards.
Shadow Rising.
Okay. Which is great, because that means I typed it properly into my phone to download it, and then typed it incorrectly immediately afterwards here.
Nice.
Yeah.
So there's no prologue, really?
There's no, that's interesting. So I downloaded it and I like clicked it just to double check, and it took me straight to chapter 1.
All right. First 10 chapters.
So first 10 chapters?
All right, let's do it.
Cool. So that's it. Any final thoughts? No.
I'm glad we're done with this book and into the better book.
Awesome. Cool. I'm excited. And on that note, thank you everybody for listening. May you always find water and shade.